Helen Dalton, member for Murray in the New South Wales Parliament. Thank you for speaking with Flow News 24. Now, Helen, some people have been talking about the possibility you might have a look at going into federal politics. Can you clear up what might be happening here?
Yes, I'm really tired of the neglect around our electorate, and really am seriously considering throwing my hat into the ring and contesting the seat of Farrer, running up against Susan Lee. So I've been given a lot of, encouragement by many of my constituents, and so I'm just weighing up the possibility of doing that. And I guess what happened was with this tourism stimulus package that was announced last week, it really is a disaster for regional New South Wales. And I thought, just given that we have two high-profile federal ministers in our area, Susan Lee and Michael McCormack, and they're not advocating at all for us. So we're missing out on $1.2 billion within our region. And this money will go to other parts of Australia. And given that the COVID border closures have really impacted on us along the Murray River, I thought that was just disgraceful, really, that there's no money coming to us.
Yeah.
So I think I could make a better representative than Susan Lee, because I would be calling this out.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, there's a natural choice there for you. The seat of Murray fits neatly within Farrer, I take it. There's the seat of Riverina wasn't something you might have considered?
No, I don't live in the seat of Riverina. So Farrer takes in most of the seat of Murray, and also includes Albury. So, and it's a massive seat, but that's the one that, that takes in the current New South Wales seat of Murray.
One story that we've been running on Flow News 24 that touches very much on federal and state politics is the issue with the MurrayDarling Basin plan, and the concern that's come from New South Wales irrigators and others that buybacks do actually remain on the table, notwithstanding what the federal government have said, because legally the plan still allows it. And whatever the next federal government might be, it could be theoretically a Labor government, they could proceed with buyback if they can't reach the water recovery targets by 2024. What's your view on the federal, the Murray-Darling Basin plan, and how you might be able to influence that in federal politics?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I would be throwing my hat into the ring, because of the Murray-Darling Basin plan. There is so much wrong with the plan, and we need to really unpick it bit by bit and try and get a better deal for irrigators and irrigation communities in the seat of Murray. So the issue of buybacks is something that we do not want in our region here on the Murray. We've had a lot of buybacks, and it's really cruel to communities. So we know that. I know there may be an issue of buying back A-class licences up in the north of the state, and that may be an option. But for us in the seat of Murray, no way do we want buybacks. Yeah,
when we've talked about this on the air with Wayne Phillips, the morning show host as well, we've been looking at this issue of easements that the Murray-Darling Basin Authority is trying to secure in parts of the Murray when it comes to allowing temporary flooding to move floodwaters through their area. Is that something in the seat of Murray that's been coming up, that there's these negotiations to get these flooding easements?
Look, it's a highly contentious area. The people I speak to do not want to be flooded out, and I know they're dealing with constraints, and this will really impact on a lot of my constituents along the Murray. So, I just think the MDBA is trying to play God. It's no good playing God. And you're upsetting our environment with what they're doing. I think that, yes, we do value and treasure our environment, but they're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, so with these easements, the understanding we have is there's somewhere north of 3,000 of them that the Basin Authority needs to negotiate by 2024 to reach some of these water recovery targets. But they're struggling to sign many people up at all. Is that your feedback you're getting from constituents in Murray?
Look, they haven't really contacted me much about the easements, other than I certainly hear about constraints issue. So no, not apparently at the moment. But people have really had enough of all this rot. And the other thing that I think people are incredibly upset about is the amount of wasted money with this. when we know, a lot of us know that it's just not practical and it's not going to work, and it's really not going to benefit the environment. In fact, it's going to cruel communities in a lot of cases. So the waste is something that really does impact on my constituents. They can't stand it.
Going back to the federal politics scenario, just to be clear, if you were running into the seat of Farrer, that would be as a Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party candidate?
Look, I've got to weigh up everything. I know that's going to be a hard gig in Albury to do that. And I've got to do a little bit of research to find out exactly how people feel. And what I want is obviously to give myself the best opportunity to take the seat. Yeah,
so you're saying it's possible you could run this simply as an independent and not as a candidate for the party?
Look, I'll be weighing up every option.
Because it was interesting if the party was looking to take on the National Party, for instance, and Liberal Party in some of these seats, that'd be a significant move in federal politics as well, potentially.
Yes, well, and they're certainly planning to run candidates for the next federal election in other seats. There's no doubt about that. We are expanding in every way. This
floodplain harvesting that you've been very vocal about and talked about a regulation that came into Parliament late last year, I think, or maybe early this year, you're quite across it. Well, we've got this response we've received from the New South Wales government suggesting that you've got the wrong end of the stick. They say that what that regulation's about isn't what you're saying it's about. You've seen some of that response. What is your response to that?
Look, that's rubbish. This regulation is really allows irrigators to harvest an unlimited amount of water under the guise of emergency provisions. And we know that because in the parliamentary hearings, the government confirmed an irrigator can take water under this regulation. And there's really no way to police this.
Yeah, and this is quite topical when you consider there's quite possibly that sort of floodplain event going on right now with all the rain that's falling in the north. And so someone could say, well, for emergency purposes, we need to divert that to stop flooding downstream. Is that kind of the argument?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is an emergency going on now, but this supposedly has something to do with construction sites and things like that. But it really... It's not made it clear for that, and they tell me it's mostly for urban construction sites. The regulation is a bad regulation anyway in every way because it's incredibly ambiguous, and it does cast a wide net, and it can take in allow floodplain harvesting, an unlimited amount of water, and of course those communities, on the Darling, that water would make its way naturally to the Darling and supply water for critical human needs, communities, to fill up the Menindee Lakes, Indigenous, and it's another way of a grab. And I just wish the government would come clean on this because we've got high-profile people that look at water all the time and they can see, you can drive a truck through this regulation. It's very, very unclear, and I think it's been deliberately made to be ambiguous.
So just to use the current situation as an example, is it your belief under this regulation someone who wants to store water could use the current emergency with the flooding that's going on to erect a levee bank, for instance, and hold that back, say it's because it was during an emergency, but actually use it for irrigation purposes later on?
That's exactly right, although they're saying you're not allowed to use it for, irrigation, but there's no regulator to stop them doing that. And if you're supposed to report this, if you're going to take water, you're supposed to report it to the regulator. And really no one's going to do that. There's only a minuscule, measly fine of $1,500, so it's pretty cheap water. Yeah. So it's kind of like, a car thief reporting the theft to the cops. Is that really going to happen? I doubt it.
So this regulation then, is there a process in Parliament where you can move to block it, to disallow it or something like that, or is it already law, basically?
Well, we've got, I think, until around about the 10th of June to kick up about this. It has to be done in the upper house. So I'm in the lower house, yes, unfortunately. But there are members that are concerned about this. And I dare say that it will be disallowed, as the previous two attempts to make floodplain harvesting legal were thrown out. I think this is the third attempt, and it'll be thrown out again I'll be doing a lot of talking to a lot of the members about this, because a lot of them, of course, aren't irrigators and don't really understand how it could be done. They think, you're looking at it and it sounds, you have to read it a few times to really realise that it's a very sneaky regulation. And of course it's law now. So we've got this period until June, I think the 10th of June, to kick this out. And I think, as I'm explaining to members how you could rort this, there's the penny starting to drop. So I have every confidence that it'll be kicked out.
You've got some colleagues in your own party in the upper house that might move on that?
Yes, Robert Borzak and Mark Banasiak. Robert is certainly can see the rorting or possible rorting with this law, and he will no doubt be moving a disallowance motion.
Yep. Well, Helen Dalton, thank you very much for being very generous with your time. I appreciate you speaking with us today.
No, thank you so much.